Resuming debate, the honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's interesting, Mr. Speaker. I think as the member for Parkdale High Park that I may well be the only member in this House that has the word park twice in the name of my riding. So I'm very happy to stand up and speak about parks. And specifically, thank you, that earns a round of applause from all present. And today, of course, we are debating Bill C-40, an act respecting the Rouge National Urban Park. And Mr. Speaker, coming from an urban riding in downtown Toronto, where the city is growing in its urban density. We're seeing increasing numbers of condos, high-rises, and growing stratification of people of different economic means, where there are some who are doing extremely well by the economy, some who are staying fairly stable, but then there are some who are falling further and further behind. And it is, in fact, a U of T professor from my riding, David Holchansky, who has talked about this idea of three cities, where we have as though three distinct populations, three cities living as one. And I see that, Mr. Speaker, even within the area that I represent, and I'm getting to why parks are so important. We have people in our community who are very well off, professionals, people who are buying these homes that are growing into not just a worth of $1 million, but multi-million dollars. And they have lots of choices about where they go and how they participate in recreational activities, and they can choose to belong to a private club in the city, and there's one, in fact, a waterfront club right in my riding, or they can take a vacation in the north, in Ontario, or any place else in the world. And there is, in fact, a growing number of people, and I see them in my community, who don't get to go anywhere. They stay in the city. They've never been to Muskoka. They've never been out on a boat, and their options are rather limited. And in our riding of Parkdale High Park, we have, which until now has been the largest park in the city, High Park. It's a city park through the visionary action of John and Jemima Howard. Many, many years ago, this park was bequeathed to the city with the understanding that it would always remain free and open for access to all. And you can see on a summer day, families come not just from the surrounding community, but from all over, and they'll picnic, they play sports, they conduct a variety of activities in the park. It's a really wonderful thing to see. We, in fact, have people coming from around the world to see the cherry blossoms in the summer when they're in bloom, a gift from the Japanese government. So it is a source of great enjoyment. My kids played soccer there, skating. There's many, many activities. But it is also an area where there has been a great deal of work to protect the natural environment. We have old oak forests there that are kind of unique to the area, and a great deal of work goes into protecting and preserving the natural ecology of that area. It's a great treasure we're all very proud of. So the idea, the notion of creating the first national urban heritage park, first national urban park is quite exciting, and I see the same potential for communities to be able to participate, have a variety of activities, be able to access nature in a way that, frankly, a lot of people growing up in downtown Toronto and some of these towers, whether condos or rentals, they otherwise would not have the ability to participate in. So it is, in fact, a real treasure. It is something that one generation can pass on to the next and for the enjoyment of people in the future. And it is something that has to be done well, it has to be done right. And so the fact that this park is being created is, of course, something that we're very pleased about and that we will, as New Democrats, be supporting. I do want to, however, raise some concerns that I think are legitimate concerns about the creation of the park, because one thing that I have come to really understand with the creation of High Park and the legacy of John and Jemima Howard is they got it right when they bequeathed this park to the city. They got it absolutely right. And you can imagine in downtown Toronto, if this land were made available for development today, it would be worth, I can't imagine how much money these acres of waterfront property in the center of the city. But this parkland has been protected for the present and for future generations. And how this new Rouge Park is structured is going to be very, very important. The Rouge Valley is home to over 1,000 species of plants and animals, including a number of species at risk. It's made up of Carolinian and mixed wood forests and very rare forest areas. And it's certainly an area worth preserving and protecting. The fact that the federal government would create this national park was laid out in the first throne speech of this current government, and we applaud that. This would be the first national urban park in the country and one of the largest in the entire North American continent. The funding was laid out for this in the Economic Action Plan of 2012, in the 2012 budget, that there would be $143 million over 10 years, and the development, for the development and interim operation of the park, and $7.6 million a year for continuing operations. The main issue, I think, Mr. Speaker, is the framework, the creation of this park, and the protection of the environment in this park. And the park is currently protected under a whole range of existing action plans that have been developed for this area. There's been incredible community engagement in the creation of this park. There have been management plans, greenbelt plans, watershed plans, heritage action plans, a variety of plans into which the community has poured a great deal of consultation, a great deal of expertise, and a great deal of hope to get this right for the future. Unfortunately, Bill C-40 does not embrace the strong foundation of conservation policy provided in these plans that I have just mentioned, plans and laws that have been passed already. And the concern is that this bill, if it passes unchanged, will in fact undermine the ecological integrity and the health of the Rouge Valley. And again, I want to say, if you don't get it right from the beginning, if you don't set out the proper framework, and if you don't get it right, then the after effects are felt by generations. So we want to see a Rouge National Urban Park that incorporates the same legal protections as other national parks. That would really make sense. And this is an idea that has broad support from environmental organizations and local community groups and residents. And while we believe this bill is a step in the right direction, we have concerns with the way that it's drafted, that it will undermine the ecological conservation of this land for the future. We think that the legislation and the management plan should adopt the long-standing Rouge Park vision with its goals and objectives. We think the bill should strengthen and implement the existing environmental protection policy framework. We believe that more of the park should be dedicated to nature and to public enjoyment, and that we should be setting as a priority the ecological health and conservation of the Carolinian and mixed woodland plain forest. There's a number of other points that others have raised, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say, again, I want to give the government credit for moving on this, but I have to say, you know, I talked about High Park in my riding. Another feature of my riding is the western boundary, and that's the Humber River. And the Humber River is the only national urban heritage river in the country. It's one you can reach by subway, the only heritage river you can reach by subway. And it's a very wonderful, historic place in the city. And we were very concerned when, in one of the Conservative omnibus budget bills, the protection for this river was removed, except for the mouth of the river. And so I thank my colleague from York South-Weston, who has brought in a bill to once again resume the protection of the Humber River, because it is of tremendous heritage and environmental importance to our community, and we believe, as it is designated, to the country as well. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge my colleagues to really think through the content of this bill. Again, we salute its existence, but the detail of it, the specific measures of it, can and should be improved upon, and we hope that all parties can work together in this House to make that happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Wellington-Halton Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member opposite for supporting the bill at second reading. I thought she gave some very thoughtful comments on the bill. Maybe I can give her some further assurances about the legislation in front of us in respect of the protection of the ecology of the park. While Section 6 does say that the minister must take into consideration the protection of its natural ecosystems, Section 4 of the bill says that Rouge National Urban Park is established for the purposes of protecting and presenting the natural and cultural heritage of the park. So that's quite categorical. And further on in Section 9, it says the management plan must set out a management approach by area that includes the following. A, the protection and presentation of natural and cultural heritage. You know, the bill is so protective of the park that it will be illegal to pick a flower in the park. It will be illegal to pick a flower because Section 18 says it is prohibited to remove, to traffic. It says in Section 18, it is prohibited to remove a wild animal, a plant, a part of a plant, or any other naturally occurring object or product of natural phenomena from the park. So it will be prohibited in this law to pick a flower in the park. That's how strong the protection will be of the park in this legislation.
The Honourable Member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I certainly wouldn't want to encourage people to try to capture deer or raccoons or any other wildlife in the park. Although I dare say, I'm sure, in spite of that, the odd flower may get picked in some cases. But, you know, there are people, as I mentioned earlier, and I appreciate his comments. I appreciate the member's comments on this, and I thank him for his work on it. But there are people who have been engaged in the development of the plans for, and you maybe as well, yes. But let me quote from the general manager of Friends of the Rouge Watershed, Mr. Jim Robb, and he says, "I've participated in almost all these processes. The current Rouge Park concept deviates significantly from the existing plans. For example, in the new vision of the Rouge National Park concept, there's no mention of the words ecology or ecosystem. That's the primary vision of the existing Rouge Park, which has been approved multiple times over 2 decades. Another thing is the 600-meter wooded corridor that's enshrined in the provincial legislation through the Greenbelt. It's in the Rouge plans consistently. There's no mention of the 600-meter wooded ecological corridor within the Rouge Park concept. I could give you more examples." So these are people who've been involved in this for some time, and I just express their concerns.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Trinity Spadina.
I'm wondering if the member would care to comment through the speaker on the proposal that has been often put in front of Toronto City Council vis-a-vis the Toronto Zoo, which is one of the major pieces of property contained within this park. And the proposal comes from people not seeking to conserve, and I would use the word conserve as in conservative, members of council who are not supportive of conserving this piece of public property in the hands of city government, but rather want to privatize it and send it out the door. In other words, they want to sell the Toronto Zoo and sell a piece of this park because they don't believe that it should be under public ownership, and they don't believe it should be under public operation. And perhaps this is one of the concerns that the province also has about the agricultural lands, that if you don't protect the agricultural lands from being sold out from the park, if you don't protect them as part of the park, that these two so-called conservatives will not conserve the parkland. In fact, will simply transact to private sector partners for development.
Honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
I thank my colleague from Trinity Spadina for his question, and as a Torontonian who has frequently visited the Toronto Zoo, and my kids over the years have gotten to love the zoo, and generations of kids have been to the zoo. It is something that we want to protect in the public sphere. You know, I talked in my comments about kids who don't get a chance, or families who don't get a chance to, they don't have cottages, they don't get to travel, they don't get to go out of the city. This may be their only chance to see even domestic animals up close. And certainly I know well from the tremendous campaign that our local community in Parkdale High Park has led to protect the zoo in Hyde Park. And the goal is to keep it public, to keep it accessible, to keep it open. And we were successful in that. And I believe the City of Toronto will also be successful in keeping the Toronto Zoo open for all to have access to and not turn it into private hands. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments? The Honourable.
For London Fanshawe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her remarks. I have to say that it fits in quite significantly and appropriately with some work that I've been doing in regard to the urban forest. Of course, my leader, and as you'll know, Mr. Speaker, he was an environment minister who worked with great integrity in order to protect the Mont-Orford Provincial Park. He's encouraged me with my urban forest program because well, first of all, I come from the forest city, and secondly, the urban forest is an incredibly important asset. As will be the proposed asset that we're hearing of in terms of the Rouge Valley. Trees protect the environment, they create a canopy, they cool us down, they prevent flooding, they provide storm protection, and great health benefits. My question is in regard to the concerns around the 600-meter wooded corridor. And in light of the importance of an urban forest, could my colleague please comment on the significance and the importance of that corridor?
Member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague from London Fanshawe for that important question. It is a question that is very pressing in urban centers, is how do you protect not just green space, but the green canopy. And I know there are many Toronto City Councillors, including ours in Parkdale High Park, who have been very vocal and very adamant about the need to increase our tree canopy in our area and in the city of Toronto generally. The last thing we want is to have kind of a concrete or asphalt wasteland. We want to have all of the health and environmental and ecological benefits that the tree canopy brings. And I thank my colleague for London Fanshawe for her work on this issue. And it really speaks to the importance of this corridor and preserving the access to this wooded area and the tree canopy, not just for now, but for generations to come.
Questions or comments? Question and comment. The Honourable Member for Oak Ridges, Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I'm going to have to ask the question again. I've asked it so many times, it's actually frustrating. How the member cites the Rouge Park plan. First, let me say this, that the bill that we brought forward actually goes further than the current Rouge, or the former Rouge Alliance's plans for the park. The protection that this bill offers is further than the 2001 protocol that was put in place by the Rouge Park Alliance. The plan that they're citing is the 1994 Rouge Park plan that called for a 600-meter corridor, a 1994 plan, Mr. Speaker, 20 years old, that is not the basis by which the Rouge Park was moving forward. This 1994 plan would see 1,700 acres of Class 1 farmland removed from production. Now, we know the Liberals have said they support that. We know some of the NDP have said that they support that as well. We know the Liberals have said they want to see farming in the area progress to small-scale farming. Again, I ask, how do you create a 1,700-acre ecological corridor, remove 1,700 acres of Class 1 farmland from this area, and not evict a farmer? It's impossible to do. So I ask the member, how do you do that without evicting farmers? And why are they citing a report that not even the Rouge Alliance accepts as the plan that they were going to move forward with?
Well, Member for Parkdale High Park.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you know, when in my remarks I listed a number of reports and plans, and this member is right that there are plans going back to 1994. But when I just cited the quote that I just gave from the general manager from the Friends of the Rouge Watershed, Jim Robb, that was from 2012. So, there was a comment he made in 2012, Mr. Speaker. So, I don't, Mr. Speaker, through you, I think this is my time to speak and not a debate, so I'd ask the member to hold his comments while I have the floor. You know, Mr. Speaker, I think the importance of creating parkland is that you can have multiple uses. You can have areas which are an ecological preserve, where you really want to preserve purely natural environment. You can have walking paths, you can have other activities in the park, you can have a zoo in the park. I think you can have multi-uses, and to say that somehow preserving the ecology of the park or insisting on woodlands in the park is somehow that has to cover every square foot is simply not correct. But I do trust the people that have been active on this issue for 20 years or more, who are saying they have concerns about this bill and that their work is not being listened to.